Hi, this is Christine from Gecko Gully Websites. I want to make a video to show my own clients how they can back up their websites, the ones that I've created for them. This will apply to both CubeCart websites and WordPress websites because the procedure is very similar. The first thing you need to do is you need to go to what's called your control panel. Now, if you've got your hosting with me or you've got your hosting with Namecheap, then what you will do is you will go to your domain name / cPanel. So it'll be like this as an example: anniesdesigns.com.au / cPanel. Okay, cPanel. Now, if you've got your hosting with someone else, like if you've got your hosting with Cheap Domains, for example, you'll have to log into your Cheap Domains hosting account to be able to get to the control panel. If you've got your hosting with GoDaddy, you will need to log into your GoDaddy account and then you'll need to launch your hosting package. If you've got your hosting with Melbourne IT, it's a little bit more complex. You'll actually need to log into Melbourne IT in order to get to your control panel. And I know that with Melbourne IT, sometimes you don't have access to all of the things that I'm about to talk about. For example, PHP My Admin, where you go to get a backup of your database, you'll actually need to ask Melbourne IT to give you access to that. Anyway, this is mainly aimed at people who've got their hosting with me, so all the examples I show you will be using my hosting. So what you'll do, assuming you've got my hosting, is that you'll go to your domain name / cPanel and you'll hit enter. Now, the first time you try to do this, there's a couple of things that could happen. One is that you might simply get a blank page. Now that would mean that your IP address, which is like the unique number that is used when you connect to the internet, is not recognized by my hosting. This, where it says this connection is untrusted, is not an example of that, because I've actually changed a setting in my hosting so that my IP address is accepted by the hosting. But if you go to your domain name / cPanel and you basically get a blank page, you're going to need to let me know what your IP address is. Now, to do that, you need to go to this thing which is who.is. You don't put the W's in the front, you don't put the HTTP colon in the front, there's no .com on the end or anything like that. It's who.is, and then hit enter. And you will see down here it says your IP address is, and then there's 4 numbers with dots in between them. It's those 4 numbers with dots in between them is what I need. Okay, if you know another way of finding out what your IP address is, then go ahead and use that. I think there's a thing called What's My IP, but basically I need to know what your IP address is so that I can do what's called whitelisting it, make sure that the hosting is going to give you access to your control panel. This is a security measure so that not just anybody can get access to your control panel. So, assuming that that's not an issue, you may see a screen that looks like this. Now, I'm using Firefox browser. The screen will look a bit different if you're using other browsers, but because there's so many other browsers out there, I'm just going to show you one. Basically, it'll tell you that the connection is untrusted. And you need to say, yeah, it's okay, I know what I'm doing. So you say, I understand the risks, so you just click on that. And then it says, it'll ask you to add an exception. So you say, add exception, okay? Then you're going to be given a screen like this, which is asking you to confirm that you actually want to do this and permanently store it. So we're going to click down here on confirm security exception. Now, like I said, it's different with different browsers, but basically you need to say, yes, I know what I'm doing and I want to store this certificate, I want to keep going, okay? You don't need to click on get certificate, you just go confirm security exception. And eventually you'll come to a screen that looks like this. And I will give you your control panel username and password so that you can log in here. Now, if you don't have your hosting with me, then you should have got this control panel login details when you had your hosting set up. So, if you don't have that, then I may have it, or the best thing to do would be just to go back to your hosting company and say, I've lost my control panel, which is the other word for cPanel. I've lost my login details, could you please send them to me? Okay, so when you've done that, you can log in. Now you're going to get a screen that looks a bit like this. Now, this is another another site that I'm looking at. I've got a few of them windows opened up here just so I can show you different things to do. Now, there's two things that make up a website. There's the programs and there's the database. Okay, so the programs and the set of programs also includes some files, for example, images that you might have added to the website. So there's two areas that you're going to need to back up. Now let's do the database first. What we need to look for in all of this mess here is a thing called PHP My Admin. And when I scroll down here, I will find it under databases. There's a thing here called PHP My Admin. So I click on that. And depending on how your browser's set up, it may open up in a new screen or it may open up in the same screen. So in this case, it's opening up in a new screen. So when it comes up, it'll look something like this. So down here, you'll have a list of your databases. Now, in this case, there's only one database. There's one called Information Schema, which you can ignore, and then there's another one, which is the client's database. Now, this database is actually a WordPress database, so we've got a whole lot of tables. Sometimes they'll start with WP and sometimes they won't, but we've got a whole lot of tables, which is all the information that is updated and maintained by this particular site. So what we need to do is we need to go up here to export. We click on that, and all we need to do is click on go. Now what this is going to do when I do this, it's going to ask me do I want to save it? Well, yes, I do. So I'm just going to click on OK, and I'm going to save it on my computer. Make sure you remember where you save it. I'm going to save it under here because this is all the stuff for this particular client. So I'm going to save it. Now that is going to take, depending on how big your database is, that could take a few minutes to run. It could just take a few seconds. So I'm just going to leave that running. Once that is done, that means that all the data that makes up your site is actually backed up and you've got it saved on your computer. Okay, now the other thing, and while that's running, you can go away and do the other part of it, which is to go back to cPanel, and we need to find all the files, all the programs that make up this particular website. So we will go back to here and we'll see the heading Files, and we've got File Manager. You can use Legacy File Manager if you like, but let's just use File Manager. Now you'll probably see a box that pops up something like this. We need to go to public_HTML. Okay. So we're going to click on Go. And if you've got a CubeCart site, you may actually have things stored above the public HTML folder. For example, if you've got PDF files that you're selling, so you might need to go up a level. So you might need to go back up to this level and do some backups there. But if you're not sure what you need to back up, get back to me if you're one of my clients, and then I'll explain exactly what it is you need to back up. Now, in the case of a CubeCart CubeCart system, I would be recommending that you're going to back up everything in that public HTML folder. The reason for that is because the CubeCart sites tend to get hacked reasonably often, and well, maybe once every few years I've got problems with CubeCart sites getting hacked. And so if you have a backup of your whole system, now I do have a backup of most of the systems, but they could be a couple of years old if it's been that long since I set it up for you. But if you've got a backup, then you know that you can take that to any computer professional and they should be able to restore it back for you. Okay, if something happens to me and I'm not around, then at least you've got your own backup. So I would be recommending that at least once you back up everything on here. This is for the CubeCart sites. For the other, now let me just go to here. Okay, this is an example of a CubeCart site. So in CubeCart we've got admin, we've got images, we've got includes. There's different folder names that we have in CubeCart sites. So for a CubeCart site, I'll be wanting you to back up the whole thing at least once, and then after that you're going to need to back up the things that are going to change. Now the main things that are going to change are images, so I would be recommending that you back up the images folder. If you've got a files folder, is that the files? Just let me pause a moment and I'll check this. Yep, sorry, I was right. It's late in the day. Yeah, so if you've got a files folder, I'd be recommending that you back that one up and you back up the images folder as well. At least that's on a regular basis, but you should at least once back up the whole thing. Now, how do you actually back these things up? I'll show you in just a moment. But let's go back to our where were we? This one. Yep, this is a WordPress site. With WordPress sites, you should back up the whole thing at least once, but you need to back up the WP-content or WP-content folder on a regular basis, because that's the one that changes most often. As you can see here, we've got WP admin. The last time it was modified was October the 29th. WP includes, the last time it was modified was December the 13th. Now it's the 1st of January today. But whereas this WP content was modified today just before 5 p.m. So that's the one that's going to change most often. Okay, so and that's going to include all your plugins, all your images, all your themes, all that sort of stuff. Everything that you upload is going to be housed in that folder, so you'll need to back that one up on a regular basis. So how you actually go about backing these up, if we were just going to back up WP content, what I would do is I would right click. Now I just hit the right button on my mouse and I'm going to click on compress. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a folder called, in my public HTML folder, it's going to create a file called wp-content.zip. So I'll click on compress files so that it'll create that for me, and this could take a little while, so I'm going to hit the pause button in just a minute. But once that's been created, we then download that onto our computer. So I'm just going to hit pause while that's running. Actually, while it's running, I'll go back over to this one, which is my CubeCart site, and I'll show you how you would do a few different folders. So let's say, for example, we want to do the files folder and the images folder. What I do is I click on the files, and then I'm going to hold down the shift button on my keyboard, and I'm going to click on images. So now I've got both of those two selected. If I wanted to do classes, docs, extra files and images, I click on classes, hold down the shift and click on images. So then it will select all of those in that group. If I want to select all of them, then I can click on the first one, scroll down and click on the very last thing, hold down the shift button and click on the last one. And then I can go right click anywhere on there, and again I can compress, and that will create a whole lot. It's going to create a folder called admin.zip or whatever is the name of the first folder. It's going to create the .zip, and it's going to contain all of that stuff there. So you can create that zip file. I'm not going to bother doing that in this case, but because it's going to take a while to run. But then you click on compress files, and then in just a moment I'll show you how you actually download that. So I'll just click cancel to get out of that, and I'll go and see if this other one's finished yet. Okay, so it's got compression results, so it's stored all this stuff. Okay, and I'll click on close, and now I've got to find it. So let me just, where is it? Yep, there it is there, wp-content.zip. Now, I could leave it there, but it's probably not a good idea, because if my hosting went down, I wouldn't have it. So I'm going to right click on that, and then I can click on download. That's a left click on the download, and then it's going to ask me, where do you want to save it? So I can save that on my computer. Now, once you have got your backup done, you've got your database backed up and you've got your files backed up, you then have a complete copy of your whole website. Now, if you then have a problem with your website, then you could go to a website designer like myself or somebody else, if you prefer to have someone else do it, and they should be able to restore your whole database back to that point. It's also how you can move it on to other hosting. There's a few other tweaks that you might have to do to get it onto other hosting, like actually setting up the database in the first place and that sort of stuff, but at least you would have the raw data that you need to give to the person who's actually going to be setting that up for you. So I hope that helps. If you're not going to be getting me to do your backups for you, then that would be how you do the backups. And then if you do have a problem with a crash or a a hacker or something like that, then the information that you've got backed up is exactly what I'm going to need to get from you, or whoever it is that's fixing it up for you is going to need to get from you. Okay, so if you've got any questions, if you're one of my clients, get back to me. See ya. P.S. One thing I forgot to say, when you've done the backup here and you've created this zip file, after you've downloaded it, you should delete it. So you'll left click on it, actually you can right click on it, and then you can click delete. And it'll ask you, you sure you want to delete it? And just make sure you are deleting your zip file and not something else that you shouldn't be deleting, and then you can click delete. The reason for that is because if you leave that zip file on there, somebody else like a hacker could come along and actually download that zip file using other methods. So you don't want to leave that zip file sitting there because it leaves your website a bit open and vulnerable. Okay, so just make sure you clean up after yourself and delete the zip file after you have downloaded it.